I just want to sort of also draw. You talked about demand in the economy. You measure consumer sentiments as well at CMIE. What can you tell us about how the consumption economy is looking from a sentiment viewpoint right now?
Of all the indicators in the Indian economy, the consumer sentiments has been the slowest to recover. It has been recovering. Whether you look at the RBI's consumer confidence survey or you look at the CMI's consumer sentiments survey, both of them tell us that the recovery in sentiments has been far more sluggish than the economy as a whole. We are growing at 7% or maybe 8% or thereabouts in this year, and sentiments are still lower than they were in the pre-pandemic times, whether you look at RBI survey or CMI survey. That's because employment is not good enough and wages are not good enough. So household incomes are still sluggish compared to where they were. Perceptions regarding households' income is not good enough. But what has happened in the recovery process in the last 3 months or so is that households have become unusually negative or less optimistic regarding their own future. So one interesting thing of the pandemic times is persistently, households have said that we are badgered, we are in a bad shape, but we are hopeful tomorrow will be better. So the answer to the question, do you expect your incomes to be better a year from now or 5 years later, was always better than what they were today. That has flipped. They are not as optimistic about their own future, although their current income has improved. So, which is very intriguing, disappointing, and I think it requires action over there. Why are people not as optimistic or as hopeful as they were 6 months ago? In the last 3 months or so, more from, let us say, even January or so, but more so since April, they have become less optimistic about their future. And also, to a question on, do you think the economy as a whole is going to do well in the next 5 years? Their answers are less optimistic than they were earlier.
That's very interesting. So then that should manifest itself perhaps in behavior of saving more, spending less, yes. Although, within sort of limited income growth, I presume.
Yes. So I think we need to worry about the sentiment. Something has flipped. A, the recovery was slow, and then their optimism on the future has taken a beating. So we require to build perceptions. We require to build a story of the Indian economy, which is more promising, which is more growth-oriented, more aspirational.
One part of that, actually, interesting you say that earlier in the year, there was much optimism that the startup story is going to be where the optimism comes from. Jobs, at least anecdotally, were being added in that sector. Salaries were sky high. I know it's a very small part of the overall labor market here in India, but even that seems to have flipped now, given what's happening globally. The funding environment has turned, and hence even that optimism seems to have dropped a bit.
Yeah, that's very disappointing. Extremely disappointing, because many of those startups did create lots of jobs, all kinds of jobs. But if those jobs also start drying up, then you see what has happened in June. The story of the startups kind of imploding, in a sense, it's a overstated word, but nevertheless, for a lack of a better one, if the startup world is imploding, and if the government says we are not going to hire as many army men as we were hiring in the past, middle classes are really, really in a bad shape. They were aspiring for these kind of jobs, and they're seeing these jobs not necessarily happening.